Hello and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner and today is October 22nd, 2019. Remember, when we're not here talking about your weather, you can always get our forecasts by going to 1-800-472-0391 on your telephone or go to the internet and type in weather.gov/Alaska and just click on the area of your concern. Now, in just a moment, we're going to be on to talk about your aviation, public, and marine forecasts, and we're going to start out by talking about the watches and advisories or warnings and advisories that are out today. First, we have this warning across the Turnagain Arm location, and this is also through Portage Valley and the Anchorage Bull for the upper hillside locations above 2,000 feet, and this is for high winds that are going to be developing after midnight. We're expecting winds out of the east to southeast direction. They're going to be blowing between about 30 to 50 miles per hour with higher gusts up to 80 miles per hour, and that's going to be running through noon on Wednesday. Now, across the northern channels here, just across the White Pass location, we're expecting snow above 2,000 feet, and this is going to be occurring tomorrow on Wednesday, bring new snowfall totals between 4 to 6 inches. Also worth mentioning is across the St. Lawrence Island area out to the west and for Diomede, we're looking for high surf conditions as we head through Wednesday and Thursday. So if you have any areas along the coast there that might be of concern, please make sure that they're secure or move them out of those waterways. Now let's take a look at the storm systems that are moving to our area. That's going to bring this active weather pattern. You can see very quickly a plume of moisture that's streaming towards Kodiak Island. Look at the speed of this system. This is racing to the north towards Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula, with the center just to the south of the Alaska Peninsula around 985 millibars during the afternoon hours. Looking out towards the east of this system, just a few clouds just moving out ahead of it, and a weak boundary had moved up through earlier during the day, bringing some light rain activity and some clouds towards the southern mainland. However, to the north, fairly quiet conditions as a ridge just to the north of Utqiagvik and out towards the west for the Bering. Primarily just northerly flow is bringing a colder air mass out through the Bering down through the Aleutians. Here's the low pressure system at the surface, a 985 millibar low. Gusty south winds developing very quickly with more of a northeasterly flow just ahead of the system, already gusting across the Bristol Bay areas this afternoon. And then we have a warm front. This is a very warm air mass that's moving towards Kodiak Island. We have a few showers from a weak boundary earlier that moved through the day. And then across the northern tier of the state, we do have some isolated snow showers and some lower visibilities, and across the interior as well near McGrath. We do have some rain showers across the west coast, but primarily dry for much of the Bering and the Aleutians, where it's gusting between 25 to 35 miles per hour on the backside of this low pressure system. Now ahead of the system, we do have a ridge off to the southeast. That's keeping the southeast panhandle fairly quiet for the afternoon hours. However, that's going to change overnight for all of the southern mainland. Looking for this low to rapidly deepen to 960 millibars. What does that mean for the Gulf waters? Well, we're going to see a lot of gales and storms, and we'll get into that in more detail in our marine section of the show. But look for heavier rain across the Gulf locations. We'll see some rain and reduced visibilities for Kodiak Island. And this boundary is going to be pushing to the southeast tonight. So all the locations across the southern mainland will see an uptick in those winds during the overnight hours out of the east to southeast direction. On the backside of this low, we're expecting a stronger northerly flow through the Alaska Peninsula, the eastern Bering locations, all the way out through the Pribilofs. They'll be experiencing some very strong gusty north winds between 30 to 50 miles per hour. Across the Gulf locations and the southern mainland, average wind speeds will gust up to 30 to 50 miles per hour. We will see some strong winds across much of the southeast also developing during the overnight hours, continuing through Wednesday. For the interior areas of the state, mainly some light shower activity with the waves that propagate to the north of this low pressure system, but we're not expecting any accumulations overnight, with some reduced visibilities from the Brooks Range north to the coast. We'll continue to see some light snow showers as well. On the backside of this low pressure system, mainly lighter shower activity with abundant moisture wrapping around, but a colder air mass and much drier on the backside. So mainly on the backside of this low pressure system, just expect those northerly gusts. And then as we head through Wednesday, this low pressure system will go from about 960 millibars to 967 millibars during the afternoon. So it will be weakening. However, it's going to continue to pull a very strong cold air mass around the core of this low. Heavier rain showers with the upper level waves moving up towards the southern mainland. Could see some snow hanging on for the Thompson Pass location. That is the only area that will probably really see snow through Wednesday, as the warm air mass just won't scour out the cold pool in that location. Otherwise, expect rain showers through the day on Wednesday with this low pressure system. Out to the southeast as well, they'll see the bulk of the rain during the day on Wednesday with the snow there to the north in White Pass. And then across the central interior, mainly along the eastern border of the state, we'll see some light snow shower activity. No accumulations expected here either. Fairly quiet across the northern interior of the state, with a little bit of a gusty flow component from the Seward Peninsula and the Bering Strait locations into the eastern areas of the Bering. Wraparound shower activity will continue through the day on Thursday, and this low pressure system will be weakening significantly to 990 millibar. So the wind on this day on Thursday is not expecting to be affecting the area. We'll just see those lingering showers across the Gulf and areas just inland. Light snow shower activity will be a little bit more active across the northern half of the state as that moisture begins to lift north, and that warmer air mass will pull inland. However, there will be some moderating, so we'll see some light mix of rain and snow across the western Alaska Range, the Aleutian Range there, and then along the coastal locations. Across the Bering, we'll see the next storm system moving towards the western and central Aleutians. This system is going to be the next one to watch as it takes an easterly track. There'll be a little bit of a break in between this system, with winds giving way a little bit, with a weak ridge that just separates the two low pressure systems. Now let's talk about your temperatures. As we head into the overnight hours tonight, well, temperatures aren't going to change too much from the day today. It was fairly cold across the Brooks Range, where they only saw temperatures into the teens. However, the north coast, which warmed up into the lower 20s, we'll see temperatures dropping back down into the teens. For the interior locations of the state, we'll see ranges from 10 degrees to 20 degrees, with the warmer temperatures across the southwestern areas of the state into the mid-30s. That warm frontal system will moderate temperatures across the Gulf Coast into the mid-30s, mainly for the overnight lows, with even mid-40s for some of the southeast locations. For the Aleutian chain, expect temperatures with cooler air mass out there will keep temperatures dropping down below 40 degrees there. However, Wednesday, they'll recover back into the mid-40s. Much of the southern areas of the state are going to be into the mid-40s to near 50, even across the southwest. For the northern interior of the state, the temperatures are going to be getting back up into the upper teens to lower 20s. And then across the southeast, expect temperatures to be in the mid-40s to near 50 degrees. However, the rain with this system is going to make things feel a little bit on the cooler side. As we head into Thursday, expect temperatures during the morning hours to remain fairly steady during the overnight hours, with plentiful cloud cover in the area, and temperatures will be slightly warmer also Thursday morning across the interior into the mid-30s, with temperatures even across the northern interior of the state seeing temperatures up into the mid-20s for the overnight temperatures. For the southwest, temperatures will be steady in the upper 30s to near 40, and temperatures across much of the Aleutians will be in the 40s. For your temperatures on Thursday afternoon, expect warmer conditions for the Alaska Peninsula and west, and temperatures across the northern tier will be back into the upper 20s, with the southern tier of the state in the mid 40s to 50 degrees.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Now on to flying weather. For your Wednesday, we're going to have a challenging day tomorrow. Looking at the areas across the Gulf and the southern mainland, we'll have widespread IFR conditions for your Wednesday morning to start out your day here, with conditions also IFR all the way up the west coast and some patchy areas across the northern interior. For much of the Bering, we'll see widespread MVFR conditions with IFR as well for the north and eastern waters there, spreading across the Alaska Peninsula. For the afternoon, don't expect too much improvement. We'll still hang on to those IFR conditions spreading into the interior locations for the afternoon, a little bit less widespread across the Gulf, but still across the southern mainland for the most part, IFR conditions will prevail. MVFR conditions will also be across the northern tier of the state with some smaller areas of IFR during the afternoon. For your Thursday morning, conditions will improve. However, we'll see another widespread MVFR ceiling coverage throughout the state. For the Bering also, we'll see MVFR with another front bring IFR conditions out there towards the west. Looking at your Thursday afternoon, MVFR conditions across much of the state with IFR still across much of the southern mainland, and then the Gulf waters will mainly be MVFR with IFR there across parts of the Panhandle. Interior, we'll see some breaks VFR along the extreme eastern areas of the state and there across the western Brooks Range. So looking at your passes in more depth, we'll look at Anaktuvik for tomorrow, going to stay IFR all day, as well as Atigun for the morning hours, which will improve to MVFR for the afternoon. Looking at Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, IFR for your day on Wednesday. And then Rainy will also be in those IFR conditions. Windy Pass will be IFR, and Isabel will go from IFR to MVFR during the afternoon. Mentasta will stay in the MVFR range, although they may see some VFR breaks in the day. And then Tanita will be IFR going to MVFR during the afternoon. Portage will be IFR. Looking at Chilkoot and White Pass, IFR all day on Wednesday. For your freezing levels, starting out across the Bering Strait here, and then just kind of dropping across the southwest, the Kuskokwim Delta, through south central towards about the northern coast there. For your climb from 2,000 to 8,000 feet along the the mainland there, climbing to 8,000 for the southern areas of the Gulf. Across the southwest, mainly 2,000, slowly climbing to 4,000, as well as much of the Bering, just mainly in that climbing to 2,000 and warmer to the south. Pretty cold air mass out across the Bering right now. Looking at your icing concerns for tomorrow, much of the state with a system that's going to be coming in for your Wednesday is going to keep widespread area of icing across the state, all except for the very northern areas and also for the southeast, mainly above 2,000 feet out towards the east, and then slightly just above 3,000 feet there across south central and the Gulf, and above 2,000 feet across the Alaska Peninsula and Bering locations. So here's the jet stream. We'll see a large trough across the state with a strong jet here at 160 knots just south of the trough over the Alaska Peninsula. Very strong jet moving inland at 150 knots. Now, at 9,000 feet, we'll see a very strong low pressure system with winds between 50 to 65 knots along the east and the south sides of this low pressure system. So strong southerly flow between 40 to 50 knots across most of the southern mainland, become a little bit lighter and change direction on the backside of this low pressure. Weaker winds out there to the west between 20 and 30 knots. And now this system is pretty well stacked, so at 3,000 foot, the winds are going to be strong once again along the south and eastern periphery of the low pressure system, but the core of wind strength is going to be widespread across the southern mainland, change of direction from south to the north on the backside of the low pressure system. 60 to 75 knots across the Gulf waters. Also, we're going to see that strong southerly flow across the southeast tomorrow too, 55 to 65 knots with lighter speeds there to the north. Looking at your turbulence to sum it all up, most of the state will be under at least moderate conditions, and then there are also going to be considerably moderate conditions across the southern and much of the western areas of the state. And we're looking at these conditions between 6,000 to 7,000 feet. So it's going to be a rough day.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, joined again by Eric Stevens from the GINA, or Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thanks for joining us again, Eric.
Glad to be here.
Thanks. We are talking about satellites today, and what are satellites? And the easy way to talk about that would be to introduce our friend the globe here, which is a round spheroid type shape. We haven't been on a flat Earth as far as history is known for several hundred years now, and because of that we also know that we are orbiting around other objects in space, and that objects are orbiting around the Earth as well. We call all those things satellites in some form or fashion, right, Eric?
Right. Well, this leads to the discussion of Johannes Kepler's research 400 years ago. Did some of the early work and founded the 3 laws of planetary motion, which are important to planets and also to weather satellites.
Okay.
Kepler's first law talks about how the orbit of an object around another object is an ellipse, not necessarily a circle.
Kind of a flattened circle?
Yeah, depending on how flat
squished
it could be.
Okay.
For our purposes, we'll just say they're mostly circular.
Okay.
The second law is most important for us, though, and that is the closer an object is to the thing it's orbiting, the faster it goes. So in the solar system, the planet Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It orbits the sun in 88 days. It moves at 100,000 kilometers an hour.
It's a lot different than Earth.
Moving.
Okay.
Right. And further out from the Earth is Jupiter, and it moves at only 1/4 the speed of Mercury, and it has to go further, so it takes 12 of our years for Jupiter to make one lap. The further out you are, the slower you go.
Okay.
So we're talking about planets. What does it have to do with weather satellites? Turns out Kepler's laws apply to planets orbiting the sun. They also apply to satellites orbiting the Earth.
Okay.
You know, our natural satellite is the moon. There's the famous Apollo 8 Earthrise shot.
Beautiful shot.
Oh, yeah, you could just talk about that forever. December 1968, the moon is about 250,000 miles away from the Earth.
Okay.
Takes a month to go around the Earth. It's that far out, it takes a full month to do an orbit. Another shot here of the International Space Station. Instead of being 250,000 miles out, the ISS is only 250 miles out. It's really close. And so it doesn't take a full month for the space station to go around the Earth. It only takes 90 minutes. It's so close, it just whips right around 90 minutes.
Okay.
So weather satellites, there are a number of weather satellites, and there are a number of orbits. The further out you have the satellite, the longer it takes to go around the Earth. And this is important because different satellites have different purposes. So we have a satellite here. This little salt shaker lid will serve as our satellite going around the Earth. Let's say you have a satellite that's 22,000 miles above the Earth. This is kind of a magical spot because at that distance, it takes a full day for the satellite to go around the Earth. Imagine if you put your satellite 22,000 miles up from the equator and had it go with the Earth as the Earth spun.
The same speed.
Right. The satellite goes around the Earth just as fast as the Earth itself is turning. In effect, the satellite will hover in one spot.
I see.
And it appears when you make a movie loop of picture after picture after picture, you can replay that and you get these movie loops. Geostationary satellites, these are called. These are stationary in appearance. And they provide a constant frame of reference. We've got an example here. Another nice thing about these satellites, since they're that far out at 22,000 miles, you can see from pole to pole, which is nice. So they're pretty broad view and a constant frame of reference.
So those are the pictures. If you're watching a weather satellite loop on TV, your favorite weather show, that's the picture that you're going to see is one that's sitting over the same spot.
If you're seeing a movie loop play again and again, that came from geostationary satellites. That's the only way you can do that.
Yeah.
The bummer, though, for us in Alaska is we're up on the very top of the planet. And for geostationary satellites to work, they have to be over the equator. So for the geostationary bird to view Alaska, it's kind of like reading a book, but you're reading it edge on like that.
Right.
So there's another kind of orbit called the polar orbit, which is nice. We're near the pole.
Yeah.
And here's a satellite. Those polar orbiters are much closer to the Earth, getting down toward International Space Station elevation. And they're not in the equatorial plane. Rather, their orbital plane is inclined like this. And the Earth turns under that satellite as the satellite orbits. The nice thing about that is for Alaska, the satellite will go right over Alaska a few times a day. And so you get a much closer image. We've got a shot from the Sumi NPP satellite. Specifically, it's a true color image from the VIRS sensor. That's an acronym there. But it's a beautiful shot of Alaska, and you can see so much detail. The kind of detail, because you're close in.
Very high resolution.
You couldn't get this kind of view from geostationary satellites. The advantage of these polar orbiters is nice close imagery. You can see a lot of detail. The disadvantage, though, is that the satellite flies by, and then you have to wait a while to get the next image. And if geostationary weaknesses are that you're reading the page like that, the polar orbiter, you're reading the page straight on, but it's so close, and then it zips by, and you have to wait for the satellite to come around the Earth again. So there's no one perfect solution. Different satellites for different orbits, each has their strength, and amazingly, it all comes back to Johannes Kepler and his laws of planetary motion. The same laws that govern how the planets orbit the sun, they govern how the satellites orbit the Earth, and even our little pretend salt shaker right here.
Right, okay. Well, since the 1957 Sputnik, we've been putting man-made objects into orbit around the Earth and starting to get pictures back. Who knows what will happen in the next 50 to 100 years. Amazing
it's
stuff.
It's a growing science, and the future is bright.
Thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. And for more information on Dehne and what the satellite systems do there and what Eric's been talking about today, you can go to the web address on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
All right, we are going to jump right into the marine segment of the show, starting with the southeast. The panhandle locations are going to see those gusty winds for Wednesday with winds between 25 to 40 knots. So gales across much of the area for your Wednesday. We'll see south to southeasterly flow across the area, with seas across the inside waters between 4 to 7 feet, and the outer waters here are going to be between 12 to 16 feet. Strongest winds up there towards the northeastern Gulf. And let's take a look at your Thursday. We will see that change of wind direction, and also the speeds will be coming down for your Thursday. Across the inner channels, that southerly wind, a small craft up there to the north with gusts on both Wednesday and Thursday. Seas on this day, though, will be between 3 to 5 feet across those inner waters. Across the outer waters, look for 16 to 20 feet for your seas on Thursday. Also, let's go back over towards the north and western areas of the Gulf, where we're going to see some storm force winds, and we're going to see up to 50 knots. That's going to be 50 knots all the way out through the northeastern Gulf through Yakutat locations, and that's going to be out of the south to southeast direction, a little bit more easterly across Prince William Sound, with those winds pulling through up to 50 knots with higher gusts all across the Gulf and in Prince William Sound. A little bit more of a northerly flow across the northern Cook Inlet up to 40 knots, and then we'll see 45 knots across the southern inlet, and more of a southeasterly direction as you head towards the south there. Seas are going to be greatest across the Gulf waters, looking between 25 to 35 heights for the seas out there. And then across the northern water, northern Cook Inlet to southern inlet, between 12 to 17 feet, highest seas there to the south. On Thursday, just like the southeast, we'll see those winds coming down and shifting direction, a little bit more south to westerly direction for your Thursday. And looking at the Prince William Sound, still holding on to a little bit more of a gust component up there at 30 knots. Gales for much of the area, otherwise small craft, although Cook Inlet will be tapering down between 10 to 20 knots. We'll see seas on this day for Prince William Sound, 7 feet across the Gulf waters between 20 to 25 feet, and across the inlet between 3 to 10 feet, the higher seas towards the southern tip of the Kenai there. And then on Wednesday across the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, well, those winds are going to be coming up, of course, tonight and then continuing through your Wednesday. Easterly will become southerly for your Wednesday across Kodiak Island. Storm force gusts with storm force winds with higher gusts through your Wednesday. Seas will be very high on the Gulf and the northern Pacific side, between 25 to 35 with your sea heights there, and then across the Bering Sea between 10 to 20 foot seas out in that direction with more of a northerly flow component, but still respectable gale force winds with gusts out north of the Alaska Peninsula. And then for your Thursday forecast, look for a westerly direction. So direction changes, winds will taper off. We'll still see gales across much of the area continuing. Bering will be in the small craft range. Bering will also see seas between 10 to 15 feet, with seas across the North Pacific and around Kodiak Island between 15 to 20 feet. For your Aleutians, northerly flow to more of a southwesterly flow as you head towards the west across the chain. We'll see some small crafts for most of the area, with gales for the eastern area of the Aleutians. Seas on this day will range pretty much between 10 to 15 feet, a little bit lower seas out towards the west between 5 to 10 feet. For your Thursday, winds will be picking up with the next storm system. Storm force winds expected with that next low that's coming up for Thursday. And then we'll see mainly gales across much of the area, although the small craft will be out there for the eastern chain. For your Wednesday, for the eastern areas of the Bering, look for gales out of the north between 35 to 40 knots for the Pribilofs, looking more of a small craft there. And then sea heights will be between 7 to 15 feet in height. On your Thursday, look for a little bit lower wind speed, small craft mainly, with seas between 5 to 15 feet once again. Northwest, we'll see lighter winds to the north, a little bit stronger through the Bering Strait. Chukchi Sea area, small crafts, seas between 4 to 15 feet on Wednesday. On Thursday, winds will be fairly persistent across the coastal areas, seas between 5 to 15 feet once again. So be on the lookout for a strong storm system as we head through the middle of the week.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.